Good morning. I'm Mike Murphy, the president of Community VNA. Welcome to Community VNA's 8th annual spring break. It's been 2 years since we've gathered in person on the last Sunday in April, and we look forward to the day when we can come together again in person to share our stories of light and hope. Over the past year or more, life has been, in the words of Sharon Salzberg, like an ever-shifting kaleidoscope. A slight change and all the patterns alter. The same can be said for Community VNA in the ways in which we've kept in touch with many of you, whether taking added measures to ensure the safety of our staff and patients, or delivering services virtually, as in the case of our support programs, our service of remembrance, or our annual tree lighting ceremony. Like many organizations, Community VNA shifted and altered the ways in which we delivered our services. The pandemic has certainly changed our lives, but one thing that has not altered is Community VNA's mission to serve the community. We serve through the efforts of our frontline and support staff, and we're grateful to you for your support and generosity. Last year, Community VNA provided more than $750,000 in free care services. What does your generosity provide? Respite support for families of individuals with Alzheimer's and related dementias. A telehealth program that helps identify potential health problems early on in order to get treatment and often avoid trips to the doctor or hospital. Grief support for hospice patients and their families. An elder dental program for over 700 area residents who might otherwise be unable to afford even routine dental care. And our full range of services for those who cannot afford to pay. So, as we celebrate the intricate, unexpected, and beautiful colors of spring, we take time to share our stories with you. We envision a future of light and hope in the post-pandemic days ahead. With your help, the seasons ahead will be bright. Thanks for joining us for Spring Break 2021 and for supporting Community VNA.
Hello, I'm Ray Spadoni, CEO of Community VNA. I'm glad you could join us today for our virtual celebration. I would like to begin by acknowledging and thanking our two principal sponsors for this event, Clarfeld Citizens Private Wealth and Rockland Trust Charitable Foundation. We are most grateful for their ongoing support. We have described our spring break event this year using kaleidoscope imagery, which seems particularly fitting. When I think about kaleidoscopes, I think about two things. First, change. In looking through a kaleidoscope, you notice ever-changing patterns, colors, and shapes. And despite relative predictability, uncertainty prevails because the moving pieces constantly form new patterns, colors, and shapes. As you know, we have all faced many challenges over the past year, and it's experienced a number of changes. Some were predicted, some were not. The healthcare industry is changing all around us here at Community VNA, and so we have been hard at work adapting and preparing for our future. We have undertaken a number of important strategic initiatives designed to help us grow even stronger for the future, no matter what that future may hold. We have been serving our community for well over 100 years, and we know that it will take continued hard work, focus, and commitment to be here and to remain strong. The second thing that I think about when it comes to kaleidoscopes is how the small pieces of metal, plastic, and glass inside of it individually may not look like much when separated, but together they form a colorful and vibrant tapestry. Together, they create beauty. Out of the ordinary, and despite the seeming chaos, there is beauty. The past year has been one full of chaos, but I have been so pleased to be a part of an organization that has worked together to continue to serve during the pandemic, never missing a beat. Our amazing clinical team and all those who support their work in our main office have worked tirelessly and without hesitation to meet the challenges of a public health crisis for both our home health and hospice patients. The coming together of everyone here along with this entire community has been nothing short of beautiful. I'm hoping that we will all be able to be together in person next year. I'm hoping that we will emerge from this time of separation so that we can once again be united in celebration. Stay healthy, and on behalf of the entire Community VNA team, thank you for all you do to make our work possible.
My name is Jessica Stearns. I work at the Community VNA of Attleboro. I'm a registered nurse. And I went to college for 4 years, part-time nights and weekends, when I was a wife and a mother, stay-at-home mother. So it was very difficult to become a visiting nurse. A registered nurse, excuse me. After nursing school, I worked on a med-surg unit for 8 years, taking care of 8 or 9 patients at a time. It was very stressful, and I didn't feel like I couldn't even remember my patients' names half the time. When I got the opportunity to do hospice home care, I did that for a year for another company. It was a lot of traveling, and this agency was hiring, and I came for an interview here, and this is the best place I've ever worked. I just absolutely love this agency and the care that I do for the community. My favorite part of my job is when it's time to discharge a patient and they say, "I don't want you to go. I love seeing you. I really love seeing you. Please don't leave me." That's one of my favorite jobs because that's just, builds me up. COVID, I have taken this COVID pandemic very seriously from the beginning. I limit any kind of socialization. I didn't get together with my kids or my grandkids at Christmas. I haven't really been to any big gatherings, so I miss my social time with my friends and my family. And I do that not just to protect them, but to protect my patients too, because I'm going into their homes. I don't want to, risk bringing something to their homes. I would feel terrible. So I have limited everything that I do to protect the patients that I see. I've also learned to slow down a little bit and enjoy being at home. And some people are becoming more connected, valuing the time that they have that they didn't have before. And I think maybe a lot of change is going to come out of this. Some not so good, some good. What is giving me hope? Because at one point, you didn't feel like you could see a light at the end of the tunnel. But with all the vaccinations that are coming out now, a lot of people are getting vaccinated. Most of my patients have gotten their vaccinations. They're all looking forward to seeing their kids, seeing their grandkids, seeing their grandmother in the nursing home. And spring is coming. The leaves are going to stop blooming. The sun's going to be out longer. Flowers are going to be coming. Life is waking up. It's been a very dark and gloomy winter. And I think people are looking forward to the change of the season. They're looking forward to being back to a little bit more normalcy now that they have been vaccinated, going out to eat, going to their favorite restaurant with their sons and daughters, or, that does give me hope.
Thank you, Jessica. You and your peers are our frontline heroes. While many of us complained as we retreated to the safety of our homes, you stepped forward, donned the PPE, and continued to serve. Thank you. Thanks as well to our generous goal sponsors. These businesses have looked beyond their own challenges during this pandemic to support Community VNA's outreach through free care. Bluestone Bank, the new name for an old friend, Mansfield Bank. Bristol County Savings Bank, a longtime partner of Community VNA. Dedham Savings Bank, which has long recognized Community VNA's service in Western Norfolk County. And Larson Tool & Stamping, a company and family associated with serving the Attleboro community for 100 years, almost as long as Community VNA. In our 110 years of existence, we've been the visiting nurses to most people. Providing care, however, takes a team of healthcare workers, including therapists, health aides, and social workers. Nowhere is this more apparent than in serving families and patients through hospice. Social worker Eileen Panus shares how a normally stressful time has been even more difficult this year when loved ones could not hold and hug each other.
I've always liked helping people and trying to find a way to make a difference in people's lives. And hospice, I've had some personal experience with loss. So the advantage of being in social work is that you can do a lot of different things. And I think that grief is something that people need support with. And when people are experiencing a loved one who's very ill and getting ready to pass, that they need that hospice support. I experienced it, and I think that I wanted to pass that on, and social work is a unique way we can do that to help. So working with families on hospice during the time of COVID has changed in that they're already begun to grieve the loss of their loved one, but they're also grieving lots of other losses that are unacknowledged. So the fact that COVID creates so much stress on the outside, they've maybe lost their maybe they've lost their job, maybe they've lost their ability to do their favorite pastime. Maybe they can't go and do their their yoga class. All of those little losses build up, and maybe it's not so apparent to people, but the way hospice works at home is the idea is that not only hospice itself, but that the family, friends, and neighbors, your greater circle, really do come in and support the main caregiver and the patient. And now with COVID, families are having a really tough time doing that. So community VNA, obviously with the restrictions that come with COVID, and all of us caregivers are out literally in people's homes, CVNA made an effort to have a place for us to go to keep our energy up, to have a place in the building where we can actually get our supplies on a regular basis, contact people for those things. And they've also opened up the EAP in a greater way. And then on a softer way, just people are looking to see, how are you doing? I think what I've learned that's positive from COVID is that you can always do something, no matter how small it is. And I think COVID teaches us to stay real small. Like, what am I doing right now? What can I do right now to make my life better, make my neighbor's life better, make my coworkers' life better? My favorite quote is from A.A. Milne. It's, "You're braver than you believe, you're stronger than you seem, and you're smarter than you think." And then the bigger part of it is that your loved one is always there with you. I'm always there with you. Even if it's in spirit, I'm always there with you.
I'm pleased now to be able to introduce you to today's guest speaker, Steve Gross, Chief Playmaker of Life is Good Playmakers. We're so grateful he is able to be with us. You may be familiar with the Life is Good Foundation, or may have seen one of Steve's speaking engagements or his TEDx talk. In today's presentation, Steve shares his thoughts on why optimism is the single most important trait a person can have, especially in navigating challenging and change-filled times like these.
Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Gross, and I am the Chief Playmaker of the Life is Good Kids Foundation. And I'm incredibly honored to be here to get a chance to speak with you all. Obviously, I wish we were at a gala together, at a dinner together, we were in the room together, but life had other plans for us. And you may have heard of Life is Good, the clothing company. And I run the nonprofit side of Life is Good called the Life is Good Kids Foundation. And our mission is to spread the power of optimism to help kids heal from the impact of poverty, violence, and illness. Now, we do that by partnering with the frontline men and women who dedicate their lives to building healing, life-changing relationships with kids. We call them playmakers. And the reason we use that term is like in sports, a playmaker is somebody who, when the game is on the line, you want them to have the ball because they're going to make something good happen at a pivotal time in the game that changes the outcome of the game. Well, y'all are playmakers because you come into people's lives at a pivotal time in their life, a time when they're not well, and you come into their lives and you make a difference that changes their lives. And that's why I'm super grateful to be here. And I want to talk about optimism. Yeah, recently it's been a little tricky to talk about optimism because, when you talk about optimism, people kind of roll their eyes a little bit because, let's face it, last several months, lots of people have been struggling to feel optimistic. But here's one of the interesting things about optimism. See, optimism, the times we need optimism most are the times when optimism is most difficult to come by. Because let's face it, when things are going rough, anybody can feel optimistic when everything is going right. But when you feel like the world is falling apart around you, well, you may not wake up feeling optimistic. But that's when we need it most because the light of optimism is most brilliant in times of darkness. And so when you enter people's lives when they're battling illness, they may not feel optimistic. They may not feel that light until you come into the room and that you bring that energy and vibe, and that's part of the healing. I wanted to start by sharing kind of one, what I would say, really important pearl of wisdom. And I hope that doesn't come across sounding arrogant because it's not my pearl of wisdom. I haven't probably had an original thought in my life. Everything I've learned from other people. And this pearl of wisdom is that optimism is the single most important trait that a healthcare provider can have. The single most important. Now, I know some of you might be thinking like, well, what about compassion? What about love? What about courage? What about gratitude? And now the interesting thing is that optimism is kind of the foundation of all of those traits. Because without it, without a sense of optimism, it's hard to love. It's hard to feel grateful. And so what I want to do is just zoom in a little bit on optimism and what it is. So I want to share with you our definition of optimism. So take a look at this right over here. Make sense to you? Probably not, right? But how about now? Yeah, see, optimism is simply our capacity to see the good. To see the good in ourselves first and foremost, to see the good in others, to see the goodness and opportunity in the world around us, even when we're overwhelmed by obstacles. See, optimism is our disposition. It is our energy. It is our vibe. And in the words of William James, a long, long time ago said, one of the greatest discoveries of our generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. In addition to altering our own lives by our attitudes of mind, we alter the lives of everybody we encounter. And so as a nurse, whether you're a social worker, no matter what you do, when you are in the life-changing relationship business, which all of you are, our disposition matters as much as our skills. It's not only when people look at treatment and healing, it's not only the medicines and the pills and the procedures that make people well. It is the energy and spirit in which the medication, pills, and procedures is administered. So this idea of disposition, of you all, and I have some experience, and I'm going to share later with my experience with visiting nurses. But that energy and that disposition is part of the healing. So I want to first look at that idea of optimism, being able to see the goodness and value in ourselves first and foremost. If you're like me, You might have come into difficult situations where you're feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I really able to handle this situation? Am I competent at my work? I mean, as a social worker myself, I know there's times where I'm overwhelmed by the experiences. And I'm overwhelmed and wondering, am I there to meet the challenge? And if I focus on the things about myself that I feel aren't enough or are inadequate, and I don't see my strength and beauty, well, I can't meet the moment. So when I think about this idea of seeing the good in ourselves, it reminds me of a great story. And this very, very successful, famous basketball coach, I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him. But he, he's a superstar coach, the kind of guy that if he gives a speech, it costs probably $100,000 to get him over there for a half hour. And one of his friends who ran like a church basketball league was like, hey, coach, I know you get a lot of money, but I'm wondering, can you just give us an hour of your time and speak to some of our players? And the coach was like, hey, yeah, you're a good friend. Sure, I'm happy to make that donation and show up and speak to your basketball team. So they're having one of those spaghetti dinners over at the church. And coach shows up and he's sitting down waiting to talk, and he's having his spaghetti dinner. So they bring over a salad, they bring over his pasta, they bring over a roll, and then a waiter comes over with some butter and puts a pat of butter on his plate. And now the coach happens to like butter a lot. So he says to the waiter, hey, excuse me, sir, can I just get another pat of butter? I love butter. And the waiter says, well, I'm sorry, but it's just one pat of butter per person. We only have enough for everyone to get one pat of butter. I think the coach is a little peeved about this. He's donating his time, so he's a little frustrated. He's like, you sure you can't give me an extra pat of butter? And the waiter's like, no, yeah, sorry. So the coach doesn't normally do this, but he says to the waiter, excuse me, sir, do you know who I am? And the waiter looks at him and says, no, I'm sorry, I don't. And he says, well, I'm Coach so-and-so, and I'm the keynote speaker here tonight. And the waiter stopped and he looked back at the coach and he says, well, nice to meet you, coach. But coach, do you know who I am? And the coach looked at him kind of funny. He said, no, sorry, I don't know who you are. And the waiter looked at him and said, I'm the guy with the butter. And I love that story because that waiter knew that he had something to offer. I know it's just a metaphor, but sometimes you might be the world's greatest coach and you might be celebrated in the streets, and sometimes you're just the guy with the butter. Sometimes you're just the friend with a car who can help somebody move. Sometimes you're just the person with an ear who can listen to somebody that hasn't been heard. But we all have something powerful to give. So I love that story. Another one of my favorite stories about being able to see the good in yourself was a little girl in her art class, and she's drawing a picture. And the teacher asks her, honey, what are you drawing? And the little girl says, I'm drawing a picture of God. And the teacher says, well, honey, nobody really knows what God looks like. And the little girl looked at her and said, they will when I'm done. That idea that we have something powerful and special to bring to the world. And we can't forget that, because when we enter a room and we're with people who have lost their way, who are struggling through darkness, we are there to bring that light. We are there to bring that energy. And I'm so grateful that you all get to bring it. Now, the second piece is about being able to see the goodness and value in others. It's really important. How do we look at, no matter who we're looking at, no matter what else is going on, despite their flaws, despite their warts, how do we look in and just see their beauty and their value? And I got another story for that too. But it's a story of a little girl who was in the Special Olympics. And her dad was an amazing athlete, and his daughter had Down syndrome, and he was a little bit disappointed that his daughter wasn't going to be able to have the same kind of athletic prowess that he had. But he signed her up for the Special Olympics, and he was really gung-ho that she could achieve at this level. And she ran track and field. And so the father got a chance to come to one of her track meets, and he watched his daughter, and they started the race. And boy, within 5 minutes of that race, his daughter was dead last. And as the race went on, she got further and further behind. And he watched all the other kids cross the finish line. And he's looking at his little girl, and she's so far behind. And finally, after about 5 or 6 or 7 minutes after everyone had finished the race, his daughter crosses the finish line. And the dad notices that the coach and all the coaches and all the other players, when she crosses the finish line, they're all cheering and hugging her and smiling her and lifting her up. And the dad is surprised. He's like, why are you all celebrating? My daughter came in last place. And the coach looked at the dad and said, yeah, you know what? But this was the first time that she stayed in her lane the entire race. See, there is always something to celebrate. Why are you celebrating? Because she tried, because she ran, because she finished the race, because she had the courage to try it. See, I think sometimes we are looking at people during difficult times, and when we can see their strength, we can see their beauty, and we can see their power, well, that allows people to elevate themselves, because people kind of rise and fall to the level of our expectations. And then the last thing is being able to see goodness and opportunity in the world around us. And being able to see that despite the circumstance. See, optimism isn't about ignoring the problems. I had a guy recently come up to me and say, hey, yo, Steve, man, I'm not an optimist. I'm a realist. And I looked at him, I said, okay, cool, man. Well, tell me, what's really going on? And he looked at me and said, come on, man, don't you watch CNN or Fox or whatever the heck you watch? We got a pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying. Millions of people are getting sick. We have racial injustice. We got an economy that's struggling. We got racial problems in our country. Human beings are struggling. We have high rates of mental illness, anxiety, depression. The world is kind of falling apart. Don't you see that? And I looked at him and I said to him, well, is that all that's happening? And he looked at me kind of funny and I said, because, yeah, you know, we got a pandemic, but we got hundreds of thousands of people every day like you risking their lives to help a perfect stranger. We got scientists from all over the world getting up, working tirelessly to create treatments and vaccines. We got activists and community members fighting for racial equality. We got companies who are innovating, who are doing business in a different way and innovating so that they can save their businesses and save the economy. There are beautiful things going on all around us, but sometimes we don't see them. We don't see them because, well, we're kind of overwhelmed by the challenges. And the human brain sometimes is like Velcro for negative information and Teflon for the positive. So that art, being an optimist and being able to deliberately, even if you're not feeling it, look and see the goodness and value makes such a big difference when we enter the room. Last thing I want to say is that nobody's optimism and wellness is more important than your own. As a service provider, as a hero, you cannot spread to others what you do not have for yourself. So, wow, about 8 months ago, I lost my dad. My dad was my best friend, best man at my wedding. He was he's my North Star. And he got sick during the pandemic. And so we called in some visiting nurses to take care of my dad. And they took care and they gave him some treatments and some PT. But pretty soon it looked like my dad was really fading and that we'd have to make the transition from nursing care to hospice care. Now, during that time, my dad would look forward to the visiting nurses coming in because they listened to him. They laughed at his jokes. He had somebody to talk to. There was a lot of pain and darkness in the house, but when they came in, they brightened everything up. And my dad felt so close to them, so cared for. And then when he got the care that was hospice care, he felt the same way. And we felt the same way. We'd sometimes be struggling as a family, just overwhelmed by grief. And the visiting nurses and the hospice workers would come in and they'd bring light and love to our home. They saw us, they understood us. And my dad felt so close. I remember this one beautiful thing. So my dad had a great sense of humor. And very close to the end, when my dad was really not very coherent, one of the nurses came in and said, maybe I could clean your dad up a little bit. And my mom was like, well, you don't have to. He won't even notice. And she said, well, I'll notice and you guys will notice. Let's clean up your dad. So she started kind of washing my dad, giving him a little sponge bath. And while she was doing that, I stood behind my dad and I was just holding his head. And I was kissing his forehead. And I made a little joke, even though I wasn't sure my dad could hear me. And I said, "Dad, I just want you to know that's me kissing your forehead, not Sandy." And Sandy smiled. And then I heard my dad, just this very faint whisper, I heard him say, "That's what I was afraid of. That's why I'm keeping my eyes closed." And I saw a little smile. That's how close he felt. That's how close, that's how cared for he felt. And we all felt. So you all come into people's lives during very dark times, and you bring light, and you help people to see their strength, to see the goodness and value of their loved ones, and to allow people to heal or to make the transition of death with dignity. I'm so grateful for all of you, for the work that you do to help others in times of sickness and to allow them and to create environments for healing. And part of that is bringing the light of optimism everywhere you go. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Everyone who's out there that can support visiting nurses, man, y'all need, there's no more important endeavor to support, because how we care for our sickest, most vulnerable people is really how we evolve as a humanity. That's a reflection of our humanity. And I just want to thank you all for the work that you do, for coming into people's homes, coming into people's lives, and helping to make them well, and helping them to see the good in themselves, others, and in the world around them. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thanks, Steve. I can't count the number of times that a Life is Good decal or t-shirt brought a smile to my face. Your message on the importance of optimism in our lives is truly welcome as we emerge from the dim days of winter and the dreary days of the pandemic. When we are optimistic and recognize all the good things in our lives, we also want to share them with others. This has never been more apparent than during the past year, as people took to balconies in many cities to serenade passers-by and thank healthcare workers. Here in Attleboro, many reached out to sew masks and provide PPE to our community VNA staff. We hope you'll join in this sharing by supporting Community VNA now, as you have during the pandemic and before that as well. There are many ways you can help. Some of you have probably already accessed our online auction, but for those who haven't, let me tell you a bit about it. The auction is open from now through 9 p.m. this coming Friday evening, April 30th. Bidding is easy, and you can bid anytime, anywhere, using your computer, tablet, or smartphone. Access the auction at charityauction.bid/CVNA. The auction features artwork, collectibles, giftware, jewelry, specialty crafted items, and the always popular gift certificates and gift cards. All of the items are donated by individuals and businesses in order to support the work of Community VNA, and particularly our free care services and support. Break out of the pandemic by treating yourself or someone special in your life to a gift from our online auction. Life is good, and you'll feel doubly good by submitting the winning bid for a great gift and supporting Community VNA. Of course, you can also make a cash donation anytime to Community VNA. You can text to give as well. Text SPRING21 to 44321. On behalf of the recipients of our services, thank you.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Dibbert, and I'm a member of the Community VNA Board of Directors. I'm thrilled to be here with you today for our virtual spring break. We are so grateful for the support of our presenting sponsors, Clarefeld Citizens Private Wealth, and the Rockland Trust Charitable Foundation. I would also like to thank you for joining us virtually today. And if you have not yet bid on one of the items available in our online auction or have not yet made a donation, there's still plenty of time to do so. Your support helps the Community VNA continue to provide free community services, including caregiver and respite support for families of individuals with Alzheimer's and related dementias, and bereavement and grief support services for hospice patients and family members. These services truly allow for us to look forward to a future of light and hope. As we conclude today's program, and on behalf of the entire Board of Directors, our staff, and our volunteers, happy spring. And in the words of Angie Wayland Crosby, please remember that spring is the perfect reminder that resilience is only a season away. Now we hope that you enjoy an uplifting performance from the Unlikely Strummers.
you.